Welcome into the Full Tilt Devy podcast on the Full Tilt Podcast Network, proudly presented by Fantasy Points and Underdog Fantasy. Now for your hosts, Mr. John Arrington and Andy Starr.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Full Tilt Devy podcast. I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A, joined as always by Andy at AStarFF on Twitter. And we are brought to you by Underdog. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you go pick those players, do the overs and unders with the pick'ems, and win some money. Use that promo code FULLTILT, and you will get your deposit matched up to $100 to date. But
Beautiful.
We're not here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just saying that sounds like a great deal. I'm not sure why we're not all taking advantage of that.
Exactly. It is a great deal. Go check that out. But like I said, we're not just here to talk about Underdog, even though we do appreciate the sponsorship, and it is a great deal. We are here to talk about some college football, some Devy players. I believe we have a Devy mock to go over, or a Dynasty mock to go over tonight. So there will be some fun stuff to get into. But first, we have to talk about a debacle of a game. And I don't know. I mean, last time we were talking about Tennessee, we had Lucas come on, and I mean, it was Vols by 50 and all that. I mean, was it Vols couldn't even get to the 50-yard line this time? Like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I mean, brutal game, right? Like, that's putting it lightly. Not even close to the excitement of Bama at Tennessee. And I think if you're a Tennessee fan, like our friend Lucas, you got to feel pretty bad after that game. Georgia, it was just a systematic defeat of Tennessee. Their defense was as advertised. They're forcing turnovers. They didn't let up any big plays. Tennessee only had 2 carries of over 10 yards, and none of them turned into 15-yard runs. Hendon Hooker, I mean, you can't really – he played okay, I guess, but the yards per attempt weren't there. He obviously wasn't able to get any scores. It was just like it's a systematic defeat. They were up 24-6 at halftime, basically just held serve the rest of the game. They could have scored more, but they didn't have to with how the defense was playing. Bennett only attempted 4 passes in the second half compared to 21 in the first half. They knew the game was over, so the plan was just to run clock and go home. From a Devy standpoint, I'm not going to knock anyone down too far on Tennessee, except maybe Hooker. I think this was kind of like his Heisman moment, and he blew it. Let's be honest. Therefore, his chance at like a first-round draft capital is kind of out the window at this point for me. But Georgia's defense is one of the all-time greats in the history of college football, so I can't really fault the rest of the team too much for struggling. But man, that was a tough game to watch in real time.
It was, and I only actually caught half of the game, so unfortunately I didn't catch the fun half. So I didn't really see everything that went on in person. But just looking at the stats from Hooker, like, it doesn't look like he had a terrible game. Like, he didn't throw 4 picks or anything like that. Like, it wasn't like he necessarily lost them the game. And we had talked about it last week, how it was really going to come down to, can Georgia's defense stop Tennessee's offense? And I think the answer is very clearly yes, they can. And it's pretty scary for everyone else, considering how they've looked against every other team. But I also wonder if, they were able to get the prescription for what they needed by watching the Alabama game. Georgia was, and just seeing like, okay, so all we have to do is actually have like our safeties play, and then like we can stop Jalen Hyatt and not let him score 5 touchdowns. It just seems like just about everyone had a pretty quiet game there. So like you said, I'm not going to like really truly knock anyone down, but man, it just seems like Georgia is the one that they're clearly the best team right now. I would say that is pretty easy to see. And, at least Lucas can be proud that Tennessee was at 1 at some point in the season. But unfortunately, I think that'll be the last time that we say that.
No arguments for me here on that. Georgia very clearly looked like the best team in the country. I wish I could say more nice things about Tennessee. I don't think they're not a top 5 team, but they're definitely not the number 1 team.
No, they're still a good team. I'm not trying to hate on them or anything, but yeah, it's just more so that Georgia really just put their foot down and just said like, hey guys, like this is our game, this is our this is our league, we're gonna win again. And the best part is they don't. I mean, obviously they do have to play Alabama again, I'm assuming, but like they don't have to really worry about Alabama in the playoffs unless they don't have to play them.
Not after Bama did what they did last weekend.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so yeah, I guess I'm always thinking Georgia has to play Alabama, like that kind of thing, and yeah, no, I guess they don't have to.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point. I don't think they play each other. You might be right. They're in separate divisions, but I'm pretty sure they don't play each other this year.
Georgia has Mississippi State and Kentucky left on the season.
Yeah, so no. And Alabama's not going to be in the SEC championship unless
they are
happens.
Not.
Although we've said that, like we also talked about last week how Tennessee was at 1 and Georgia was at 3 and all that. So like we see some crazy stuff happen, including, like you said, Alabama losing, and then we had Clemson losing, Arkansas losing, some big players in the game. Now, I think we all kind of thought, or at least I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking that in my head. Making that up in my head, that Clemson shouldn't have been up there at 5. That just seemed a little too crazy. Obviously, we would always expect Alabama to be up there, somewhere up there. And then I don't know how crazy it is that Arkansas lost. I mean, I don't know. I've said from the beginning I never thought Arkansas was all that great of a team. I guess they've had some good showings and everything. KJ Jefferson's been pretty good. Obviously, Rocket Sanders has been amazing up until this week. But which one do you think was the biggest upset? I mean, I guess I know your answer.
Yeah, I think Bama LSU, because we talked about that game last week, and I was like, oh, LSU, they were a fake top 10 team, is what I was saying, and obviously they go in. Granted, they were at home in Death Valley, which is a really hard place to play, but they beat Alabama, who I think everybody was convinced was on their way to an SEC championship game and potentially beating Georgia and working their way into a playoff. But, looking at the game, I think Bryce Young looked a little rough out there. He had less than 60% adjusted completion percentage. Yards per attempt was under 7, only the 1 touchdown and an interception. But I think what really the takeaway is the lack of wide receiver play was so evident in this one. Outside of Ja'Cory Brooks, Young really had nobody he could throw it to on the outside or in the slot. He targeted Brooks 16 times. The second highest targeted wide receiver was Jermaine Burton, who had 3 targets. Gibbs, of course, looked great. He had almost 100 yards on the ground and 8 catches. We obviously love Gibbs. But overall, I don't think I can take – people are out there saying, Young, he looked horrible. He's not an NFL quarterback, which is obviously hyperbole. But I think he's looked really good this year with very little, given what we've seen from that wide receiver room. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to overcome those offensive woes from his team here. It cost him the victory in overtime. But I will give props to where they are due in Jaden Daniels. Super efficient game, got the job done. Talked about him on the Devy recap. I still have my doubts as an NFL prospect, but good job securing the win there. And he made that Bama defense look pretty silly the whole game. They couldn't really tackle anybody.
Yeah, you knew I was going to be coming in here talking about Jaden Daniels.
I knew
it. First of all, I also said that I did not expect LSU to win this game. I guess maybe I should have given them a little more credit at home and all that, but I still didn't expect it to happen. But I saw what I wanted to see, which was Jaden Daniels have a good game. And I was talking about it last night. You even popped into the chat. We were talking about Jaden Daniels, and my co-host on the Devy Devotional doesn't really believe in him as well. So I'm sitting here fighting the good fight against 2 different co-hosts. But I was saying, like, now obviously we know Malik Willis went in the 3rd round, this past year, and we see that he's terrible. If the NFL, like, we always knew Malik Willis was terrible. If the NFL drafted him in the 3rd round, why wouldn't they draft Jaden Daniels that just beat Alabama and looked damn good doing it? And it's not like it's the first game that he's done this. Like, he's looking good. We see that he is an athlete out there. Like, he is the athlete, the type of player that you want to see, running around, making plays happen, like all that kind of stuff, and he can still throw. Now, he's not going to be a prolific passer. I don't believe in that, but I just feel like we've seen recently the NFL invest in some of these guys, whether it's second rounders and Jalen Hurts or, third rounders and Malik Willis and obviously other players as well that maybe aren't the best passers. And they say, hey, like we know that they're talented. Let's go ahead and see if we can get anything out of them. And so I don't really think it would be that insane for it to happen. And that's why I've always been kind of a big Daniels backer. Now, I guess at some point, probably a year or two ago, I thought, oh, maybe he'll be a first round pick. I guess I'm not seeing that anymore, but like I definitely think he can make it to the NFL. And then if all he needs is a shot at that point, because I do think he's talented.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Willis, I guess, is not a bad comp to Jaden Daniels. I mean, Malik Willis's adjusted yards per attempt were a little bit higher, but I mean, not really anything statistically significant.
Yeah, except for one's playing in the SEC and one's playing in Liberty. So that's a little different.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, if you want to make that comparison, I mean, obviously there's a size difference with Malik Willis. But
no, and I wasn't even comping the players. I was just really more comping the situations and stuff like that. I definitely do not want to comp Jaden Daniels to Malik Willis. Please don't ever do that. But this isn't a Jaden Daniels pod. I was just I went off on a tangent there. But it definitely was a shock that they won that game. That overtime call to go for two was a great call by Brian Kelly. Although if they had missed it, of course, it would have been a terrible call. But I love having the balls to do it against Bama at home. Because it's just one of those things where like technically they could make the playoffs still. It was probably their only shot to make the college football playoffs was to win this game. Get that 2-point conversion, because chances are if you give Bama the ball again, your chances of losing probably go up every time Bama touches the ball.
Yeah, Brian Kelly earned his right to use his fake Cajun accent for a week after that call.
Exactly. So, what do you think of the Clemson game? That one was pretty ugly. Wasn't it like 19-6 or something like that?
It was like it might have been 28-0 at one point.
I must be thinking of a different game then.
Clemson looked rough, and I'm not sure why they trotted DJU out there after he almost blew that game against Syracuse. But that decision may have cost Dabo and the Tigers a playoff spot. Now, I'm not sure Cade Klubnik was going to get them a win either, because he did come in and immediately throw an interception. But playing DJU was, all but guaranteeing yourself an L. The offense was ineffective all game. DJU turned it over twice. It couldn't even manage 5 yards per attempt passing. Just their whole season, their offense has just been really uncreative, and Notre Dame had an answer for everything. Conversely, Notre Dame just played their game. Like, they didn't ask Drew Pine to do much more. I think he only passed it like 17 times. And they just ran it down Clemson's throat with Logan Diggs and Audric Estime. And they scored touchdowns on defense and on special teams. So just like an all-around 3 phases of the game victory for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and you talked about my boy Estime on the recap. Love to hear that. I mean, he's definitely showing out, and he's starting to stand out. But like you said, it's kind of wild when we think of the start of the season with Notre Dame, with Tyler Buchner, and nothing went right. And then Buchner gets hurt. He's out for the season. And then all of a sudden, Drew Pine came in and was terrible for a couple of games, like absolutely terrible. And now, they're actually looking decent. They're not going to obviously do anything. They're 6-3, I think. So like they're not going to be in the playoffs or anything like that. But like they're at least looking respectable. And obviously going in and beating a top 5 team, gives you even more respect, especially when you kind of trounce them. And I don't know what I was thinking about with the score, but I'm looking at it now, 35-14. I was definitely thinking of a different game there.
Yeah, it was a good solid win for Notre Dame. That's just like a weird Jekyll and Hyde team this year, where like they lose to Marshall. Obviously, that's the beginning of the year. Maybe they're still working out some kinks and with a new coach and whatnot. And then they go and beat teams like Syracuse and Clemson now. So, but good for them. Good win.
Will Shipley not looking too great in the game. I guess really no one looked good on that offense.
I'll just say Clemson needs to fire. Their offensive coordinator's name is slipping my mind right now. But I think this is his first year calling plays, and it's looking brutal out there. I mean, I'll be the first to say, like, I had some hope in DJU at the beginning of the. I mean, I talked about it on this show, and he was playing safe, I think, which is good.
4.3 adjusted yards per attempt in this game.
Man, like ever since I feel like I kind of jinxed him because like in the weeks after I started talking about him, it's just gotten really, really bad for the guy.
That was one of the craziest things because that was really when I like first started getting into like analyzing Devy and all that kind of stuff. Every single person had DJU as the QB1 in Devy. It was like the simplest thing. And I even looked at I think it was 3 or 4 games that he had played in the 2020 season, and I'm like, yep, QB1. and that was one of the first steps in me figuring out that I needed to build like certain thresholds for like attempts and games played and stuff like that into the Devy model. Because I shouldn't just bank off of a few games played in one season at the end of the season.
My model is just don't ever try to evaluate quarterbacks because you're probably wrong.
Unless you're me and you're talking about Jaden Daniels, of course. Of course. And then, I mean, anything about Arkansas? I mean, do they matter?
I will just say, like, because we love Rocket Sanders, obviously, that they kind of just gave up on it. He had like a drive. There was a drive where he had 50 yards on the ground just on a single drive. And then Jefferson threw a pick ending the drive. And then the second half comes around. Obviously they're down at that point, and he only got 5 carries the entire half. So I know that they're behind, but you just can't abandon your entire identity after the first half. But big shout out to Liberty, I guess, for pulling off the upset. Arkansas is now 5-4. And the rest of their season is LSU, Ole Miss, and then at Missouri. So I'm not sure. I don't see how I don't know if they're going to win any of those games. And now they have these bad losses to Liberty, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State. I wouldn't be surprised if their head coach Sam Pittman gets fired in the next couple of weeks here too.
Maybe Rocket Sanders transfers out.
Hey, I mean, coach gets fired. I'd love to see him at Alabama. That would be that's like Derrick Henry 2.0, right?
Oof, yeah, that would be wild. I really hadn't even thought about it until just like when you were just talking about his, the coach being fired. I'm like, wait a second, he might actually be transferring out of here. Dang,
I didn't think about it either, but now I'm getting kind of a little excited here.
Yeah, Gibbs leaving, and all of a sudden he's the Bama man. That is a little exciking. But
you heard it here first.
Yeah, that's right. Lucas says, "Please stop." Oh man, I just lost my train. Oh no, so I was gonna say, no, I did. I lost my train of thought. So never mind. Well. Lucas got me all screwed up here.
He's scared.
No, I was gonna say that Rocket Sanders obviously had a rough game, but he had like two pretty damn good games before that. I know you had kind of mentioned how you were like still slightly concerned, or not concerned, but like slightly like iffy on him if he's that top tier kind of guy. Now that he's at Bama, what do you think about it now?
I mean, yeah, no, right. Now he's at Bama and he's getting 60% of the carries. Yeah, I love him. That's gonna be great.
Oh man, I love it. We definitely need to do the whole like Luke Sawhook candle thing and make this happen. The prayer circle and we'll make this happen. But why don't we take a little break and then we will get back to come back to a 2023 Dynasty this or that.
Aaron Rodgers is so washed. It's like when you're out, when you have a big trip and you go do an ayahuasca and then you get home and you see your buddies and they're watching Cheech and Chong and you're like, oh man, like I need to get high. Does anybody have any ayahuasca? And it's like, no, they don't, because you're in like a suburb. And then you're like, well, I do have this like bowl of weed. And then you put in your bong and you finish the bong after you get through the bowl. And then you're like, okay, I got to clean this out. And you haven't cleaned it in like a year. And so you put that thing through the ringer. We're talking dish soap. We're talking scrubbing. We're talking there's fucking caked on tobacco that people were sticking in there when your buddies were over. You got to scrape that shit with steel wool. We got to get that shit pristine. We got to get that shit ready. He is so washed that he is like a washed out bong that you took honestly 48 hours trying to get clean after not having previously cleaned it out in 3 years.
Wow. I wonder if he thinks he's washed.
That was descriptive. That was like 3 levels of description.
It was. There was a lot of ayahuasca talk.
Oh my God.
Alrighty, so like I said, we're going to be talking about a 2023 Dynasty This or That. I believe that there was a Dynasty mock draft performed by the Devy Royale boys. I don't know who all was involved, but basically we have all of the ADP here of where everyone was taken, and there's some pretty interesting players where we have the incoming rookies from the next class compared to some of the other the other veterans that are nearby in ADP. And so we're going to sit here and try to figure out who we would rather have at this point. Andy, did I explain that right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not entirely sure who was all in the draft either, but I think this is like a good exercise because we're not all drafting in our leagues with seasoned experts, I guess. So this is just like a typical draft you might start up. Like if you did a startup tomorrow for a 2023 league, this might be like what your ADP would potentially look like.
Who was the 101?
I think it was probably Josh Allen or something. I don't remember.
All right, so it is a super flex league.
Yes. Yep. Superflex tight end premium.
Okay, perfect. And then you said you're going to be comparing the values to keep trade cut, just to get like an idea of where the public feels or how the public feels. Right.
Yeah. And I know keep trade cut is kind of, sometimes it feels like people are just memeing players up sometimes. So, right. You just like for a few of these players that I put on the show sheet, like I just picked a different player that was around the same ADP because it made more sense because, sometimes there's guys that are just pumped up for no reason. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not going out of my way to use keep trade cut, but I understand using it for this exercise here. So
exactly.
Why don't we get into the most obvious one, which is Bijan Robinson? Where did he end up?
So he was taken as the RB4 off the board. Keep trade cuts. This is one where I switched it up. So keep trade cuts RB4 was Christian McCaffrey, and I was like, okay, well that's easily Bijan Robinson. So I'll make it a little tricky. Keep trade cuts RB3 is Travis Etienne. So my question would be Bijan Robinson or Travis Etienne right now if you're in a dynasty startup.
I'll tell you what, this one's probably harder than, at least for me, than a lot of people would expect. Obviously, it's not that difficult. I'm going to go with Bijan, but at the same time, I love me some Travis Etienne. I wish he hadn't. I have from like the beginning. I wish he hadn't gotten hurt last year because he probably would have already been like the dynasty RB1 at this point. But it is more difficult. But Bijan is a more complete running back. Like a little bit of everything, and so I think he'll easily slot in above Etienne unless Etienne just completely like finishes the season on a tear. But as of right now, I think that I can easily say, I mean, if you watched any of that Texas game last week, it's pretty easy to say that Bijan Robinson is going to be that dude, and I'm taking him there. What do you think?
Yeah, it is a lot tougher than I think a lot of people would care to admit. We've all just been saying like Bijan Robinson is going to be the dynasty RB1 next year. I think you have to give it to Bijan based on age. Now, I know that there's some data now that the age cliff might not be as real as we once thought it is because a lot of the running backs this year are older than like the top 6 or 8 running backs this year are, above age 26, which isn't the norm. At least not all of them, but some of them. So there's, fantasy football is evolving every single year. But if you're taking age into account, Etienne is going to be in the league this will be his 3rd year. He had an extra year in college. He had that foot injury. Bijan Robinson doesn't have any of those things. He's got less wear on the tire. We know he's an elite running back prospect. So I think you got to give the edge to Bijan Robinson if you're in a startup right now. Any format really. Like I would take Bijan over Etienne straight up.
Yeah, and there's some people saying like, what if Bijan goes to a bad spot, like a bad landing spot? Like, do we really think the Jets were a great landing spot for Breece Hall? No. But guess what? He was a stud, and he became the RB1 in Dynasty within like 5 weeks. Obviously he got hurt, and that sucks, but that has nothing to do with it. I just think that a player of this talent, it's not going to matter. Look what Saquon Barkley did on the terrible Giants in his first year. 2,000 yards. Like just amazing rookie year. Those kind of talents beat all those odds, and those kind of teams, even if they are bad teams, and they go, oh well, we just need to give this guy the ball every single time, and they go and win, or like 4 games, but the Bijan will have 18 touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah, I can't. I'm running through like all the NFL teams in my head right now. I'm trying to think like what would be a bad spot for Bijan. Like he's gonna be Bijan no matter where
Jets.
he's at. I mean, it'd be weird like if the Jets took Bijan Robinson,
right?
Oh, that would suck.
Although I mean, it's not impossible. Like, I don't think it'll happen. I hope it doesn't happen. But like it's also not insane. I mean, we don't really see it with running backs as often, but at the same time, we see, I mean, like, look what the Jets did with Elijah Moore and then drafting Garrett Wilson. And I mean, obviously it's wide receivers, it's a little different, but like there's teams like the Packers where you're like desperately begging them to draft a wide receiver. And then you have teams like the Jets and they're like, all right, we got Corey Davis, we got Denzel Mims, we got Elijah Moore. Let's go get Garrett Wilson, just so I don't think it's insane to think that he could end up, maybe not the Jets, but like maybe another team where you're like, oh, I really like this running back. Like look at like the Raiders and like Josh Jacobs, and like obviously at that point you would probably assume that Jacobs is going to be gone, so maybe that's not a good example. But I'm just trying to think of like off the top of my head like a team with the guy that's still under contract, and they come in and like you're still going to expect that Bijan's going to be the stud. So I'm not going to worry about it. Just like with Michael Carter and Breece Hall this time, this year, it didn't really matter after a few weeks. Now people start freaking out after the first couple of weeks and like, wait, the rookie's not in there. He's not getting 100% of the carries. It's like, all right, give it 3, 4, 5 weeks, guys. Let's chill.
That's when you buy.
That is definitely when you buy, because if you bought Breece Hall after week 4, you would have gotten a haul after that, but unfortunately he got hurt. So let's move on to the next one, and it's our first QB, and we have CJ Stroud, who went QB 11, and then we have a little tricky one here with Deshaun Watson as the counterpart there. So this one has different implications of, how do you feel about the player? How do you feel about all that kind of stuff? But we also know that, Deshaun Watson's going to be a valuable dynasty piece. If he's not already, he will be here pretty soon, unless he, does something else that's very stupid. And then obviously we know that people love some CJ Stroud, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Just speaking purely from a football standpoint, the problem with Deshaun Watson obviously is he hasn't played in 2 years, basically 2 years, 2+.
Yeah.
So, what's the level of rust there? I don't know that it's that much. Obviously they're paying him a lot of money to, be the quarterback of that team. And then CJ Stroud, it's a rookie QB, and those can not work out a lot of the times. So for me, I would take the value of Deshaun Watson right here, because I know that he's already a proven fantasy asset. He's still young. He's on a new team. He's got decent enough wide receivers. He's got Amari Cooper, who's still playing at a high level. I have to imagine they're probably going to go out and get a wide receiver in the draft this year to try and strengthen that offense a little bit. So, they got a good running game with Nick Chubb. The offense is solid there. So I would go ahead and take them, especially if CJ Stroud ends up on a team like the Lions or something where, that's not going to be a good situation. I mean, maybe it is. Who knows? I don't want to just say the Lions are going to be horrible forever, but it seems like they are.
Yeah, I agree with you here. It's always tough for me to put a rookie QB into the top 12 already. I know people want to do it just because they're young and all that, but like with a guy like Stroud, who's going to be picked at the very least in the top 10, probably earlier than that in the NFL draft, you're assuming he's going to a bad team unless someone trades up, like 2 or 3 first round picks to get him, which we can't guarantee. And there's probably a better chance that a bad team is going to draft him. And we've seen it too often recently, at the very least, where these guys like Trevor Lawrence, like Justin Fields, they go to these terrible teams and they just struggle. Like they have, a hard time doing anything in that first year, especially if the team doesn't build anything around them. And so obviously we see Justin Fields is on a tear right now, but it's not because of his passing abilities right now. Like I believe in Justin Fields, the passer. I do. But he has no one to throw to. He's throwing to Darnell Mooney and the corpse of Velus Jones. Like it's not, that part isn't great, but so he's having to run 178 yards a game. And CJ Stroud's not going to do that. So if he's in a terrible situation, it could be another year one Trevor Lawrence kind of stuff, situation where we're looking at him going, well, like, what the hell? Like, I thought this guy was good. And that doesn't mean that he's bad. It's just a bad start to the season, start to the career. Whereas I think that once Deshaun Watson, like, his ordeal should be over. Now, I guess we can never say it actually is, but I mean, he's been disciplined by the league. There was another lawsuit that came out. Nothing's come of it. Like, no one's talking about another suspension or anything like that. It seems like the NFL feels like they've done their part and, they don't care anymore at this point. So once he's on a field, and yeah, he might be rusty. It might take a few weeks. It might not even be this year. But you're comparing CJ Stroud and Deshaun Watson next year. Well, I think at that point, the rust is going to be knocked off. And then at that point, I'm going to want Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, maybe that it's not going to change. Like, Deshaun Watson's he's going to come out this year and play well enough to where we're confident that he still have that,
Yeah, and he's a fully guaranteed contract. He's going nowhere. Like, nothing's going to change. And like you said, they're probably going to build. They already have Amari Cooper and David Njoku, 2 players that I really love. And then, they have David Bell, who hasn't done much, but it's Jacoby Brissett, guys. Like, we have to give him, a little bit more time. And then, obviously, like you said, they could easily go get another stud wide receiver in this next class, because they don't have to worry about, a wide receiver. Now, of course, they don't have all of their picks, but I do believe that they still have some valuable picks, so they can still go get one of those kind of guys. But I think that I'm definitely down with taking Deshaun Watson over CJ Stroud there. What you got for us next?
All right, next one. Let's go back to the running backs and talk Jahmyr Gibbs, who was taken at RB12, or Keep Trade Cuts RB12, Joe Mixon.
This one's pretty damn easy for me, even though we just had a 56-point game from Joe Mixon. I don't chase box scores. I don't chase points, and we've seen like declining efficiency from Mixon all season long. He is getting a little longer in the tooth. He's not like old. He's not dead or anything like that. But it's really difficult for me to have Mixon in my top 12, especially when you consider adding in these rookie running backs. Like right now, maybe he's right there on the cusp. But when you start adding in your Bijan, your Gibbs, and some of these other players, it's going to be really tough for me to have a Joe Mixon there. I get that Mixon isn't dead. He has a contract. He probably will give you 1 or 2 more good years. But, I always say, and a lot of people, it's not just me, a lot of people always say, like, it's better to get out a year early than a year too late. And so I feel like, especially in a startup draft, I'd rather just take the exciting player in Jahmyr Gibbs. I know there's size concerns and things like that, but I think that the draft capital invested in him is going to take care of all those concerns, because when he gets drafted in the early second round or, mid-second round, whatever, no one's going to care about the fact that he's 205 pounds or anything like that, because the team is invested in him. They're going to see what he can do at the combine, and there's going to be a lot of excitement for Jahmyr Gibbs. We see what he does for Alabama on not the best Alabama offense, and he's still the best player out there after week. So yeah, give me Jahmyr Gibbs here at RB12.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. And we were talking before the show about just some of these running backs that were taken in the draft. Like, I feel good about this 23 rookie class. versus their NFL counterparts, for the big five at least. So like Bijan, who we already talked about, Gibbs here, and then Sean Tucker was, I'm kind of getting we're not going to talk about some of these guys. So Sean Tucker was RB16, which would have been like Kamara. Zach Evans was RB18, which is like Najee Harris right now. And then Blake Corum was RB20, which would be Miles Sanders. I feel like with all five of those guys, all five of those top running backs, I'm taking the rookies versus the NFL counterpart.
Yep.
And just, to talk about Gibbs, since that's what we're talking about here, I mean, this is like Kamara is such a solid comp for what he does. He's got the same size. He probably, honestly performed better in college than Kamara did. So, obviously saying somebody's going to be better than Kamara for fantasy is, it's impossible. You can't say that because Kamara's been so great for so long. But to think that, he's got that potential to be, as good as Kamara, I think that's hard to pass on. And if you're saying like, oh, all you got to do is toss away Joe Mixon, who's going to be, I think he's been in the league this is his fifth year, I believe. This might be his sixth year, actually.
I think he should be 27 next year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so easy for me to move on from Mixon to get potentially an RB1 for the next 5 seasons.
Yeah, I agree. He'll be 27 in next July, so before the season starts. So that's pretty easy for me. And I agree with you about all the other running backs as well. I would take all of those rookie running backs over their counterparts. This one is probably the spiciest and the most difficult one for me to really like figure out which one I want to take. And it's Quentin Johnston was drafted at wide receiver 26. Or you have his veteran counterpart in Terry McLaurin. And I know that Terry's being hated on right now because of the situation he's in, but we know how quickly situations can change, whether it's Sam Howell or whether, they bring in another QB or whatever it might be. But obviously, Quentin Johnston has turned his season around, and he's right back where he was for me at the beginning of the offseason, where I think he's going to be, a very good, top 5 wide receiver in this class. And so, but here's the thing. I feel like I'm the lowest on him, over most people. So a lot of people have him as some people have him as the top guy, and then other people have him as like a top 3 guy. But more importantly, he's being talked about, in NFL circles as like a top 15, top 10 pick in the NFL draft, which seems wild. But at the same time, we saw what happened this past year where people are, the Saints are trading up and drafting Chris Olave so early. Drake London goes so early. What do we have? 5 wide receivers in the top 16 picks. So maybe it's not that insane to think that he goes that early. And at that point, he's probably going to have so much value. And maybe that's not the point of this game, is to just talk about value. But I think that you could take Quentin Johnston, draft him, and then trade him for Terry McLaurin plus like right away. So while I don't want to hate on McLaurin because I think that his situation could change very quickly and he's a very good player, and I still have him right around that. Like, he might actually be my wide receiver 26 in my ranks. He's right around there. I know that much. But I think I'm going to go ahead and take Quentin Johnston here, and in the hopes that I can trade him. Or, I'm not saying like I have to trade him. Obviously, like, I think he's going to be a good player. I just don't know if he's going to be an amazing player. But Terry McLaurin's not like a top 5 guy either, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, this is a weird one. Obviously, if we did this exercise, 6 weeks ago, we'd be saying Terry McLaurin all the way. But with how Quentin Johnston's been playing, it's like, okay, well, now we got to start taking him serious again. And he might end up being the next Denzel Mims, just a big athletic receiver who doesn't do anything in the NFL. But he might end up, being amazing. He might be Calvin Johnson. I don't know. You don't know, right? So, and if people are saying he's getting drafted top 15, top 10, you got to take that into consideration, because if that happens, he's going to be a top 6 to 8 dynasty rookie pick. So then you got to think, is Terry McLaurin worth the 2023 106, 108? I probably wouldn't trade that pick for Terry McLaurin right now. So if I'm looking at it purely from a value standpoint, like you said, John, I think I got to get Quentin Johnston here. And like you said, if I really did want Terry McLaurin, I could just go ahead and flip him for Terry McLaurin in like a second or something. Who knows?
I really do think that you could. I get that it's the closest comp, and it's also, keep trade cut, so we can't say this is exactly where it would be. But I think you have to go Quentin there. And I was thinking for a second that we'd only taken rookies, but then I remember we took Deshaun Watson, so we're covered. We're not just the rookie, wannabes and everything. We did draft a vet as well. But then that brings us to our next QB. And this is another one when we just talked about the player, Hendon Hooker, QB 24, and versus Aaron Rodgers. Now this is getting less tough every week, it seems like. Although Hendon Hooker didn't look all that great in this past game, but we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's playing Georgia, best defense around, all that kind of stuff. Aaron Rodgers just I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is actually falling off, but man, it might not matter because that team just has no one on it. He has no one to throw to. When Alan Lazard is the guy that you're supposed to be getting excited about, you have to realize that things are going to be really bad that year. It seems like the team is unwilling to put any kind of investment into a wide receiver for him. Even though they said that they were offering a first round pick for DJ Moore, come on, he was a first round pick. What do you? And now he's proven that he's a stud. And now you're going to try and send one first round pick for him. Meanwhile, you have other players all around the league getting multiple firsts, and that's neither here nor there. But I just think it's crazy. They say they're trying to invest, but they never actually invest in anyone for Aaron Rodgers. Hendon Hooker probably is not going to be a first round pick, but I guess it's not impossible either. We've seen crazier things happen, but at QB 24, you're not really asking for too much from him. There, you're probably looking more of an investment compared to Aaron Rodgers, where maybe you're going to get one, maybe 2 more years out of them. And if they don't invest in anything, do you really want those years? If it's going to be more of the same that we've seen this year, do you even want that? So it's really tough for me to say Hendon Hooker because I don't believe he's going to be a first round pick. So I think I'm going to have to go Aaron Rodgers here, even though the whole time I was thinking I was going to go Hooker. Just as I'm sitting here talking about it, I'm I can't take Hendon Hooker over Aaron Rodgers. But honestly, I could look really dumb by doing that. And by the time this draft actually comes around, I probably will change my mind.
Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength on all these guys here. So I would also take Rodgers over Hendon Hooker, especially given what happened last week. And I think that his shot of being a first-round draft pick is out the window. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's done playing football. He might be done in Green Bay. At some point, I feel like they've got to at least see what they've got with Jordan Love, or I don't know if they're done with that whole experiment or what. I think a lot of people are probably going to get fired this year because this is such a mess. And to think that management just thinks, oh, we've got Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't need to have an elite wide receiver to be good, is so asinine, because you look at all these other quarterbacks around the league who have been mediocre, and then they get a Stephon Diggs or an AJ Brown or a Tyreek Hill, and all of a sudden they're one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It matters to have these guys making plays. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers is done. I think he's way undervalued right now, but again, keep trade cut. Good luck, buying Aaron Rodgers for a late second, basically.
Right.
But let's just say for the point of, the exercise, without knowing who the QB3 is going to be in that draft class, would you rather have Aaron Rodgers or the QB3, be it Levis or Hooker or somebody else?
If it's Jaden Daniels, you know that I want Jaden Daniels, so that's pretty easy. But yeah, I think I would take Rodgers over all of the QB, whoever the QB3 would be. I think that is a pretty good. And I know a lot of people are just assuming that he's going to retire and assuming that Brady's going to retire. I feel like both of them have so much ego that they cannot go out like this. Now, I mean, maybe eventually Brady's going to have to go out like this because he's going to finally realize, like, dude, I just can't do this anymore. But I think that, Brady ruined his marriage, did all that, and he came back. He can't go out looking as bad as he's looked. And I kind of feel the same way with Rodgers. Obviously, he's still under contract for multiple years. And I mean, maybe he will do it like intentionally, but like he would really be screwing the Packers if he went ahead and retired, because they owe him so much money. And I know there's certain things with, like, he would have to pay back certain things, but they've already paid him quite a bit of money, and I'm not sure he would have to pay that kind of stuff back. So that maybe he would do it just for the laughs, but I think that his ego. We hear him talking about it still. Like, he goes on the Pat McAfee show and everything, and talks about like how. They're just, they're right where they want to be. And, 5 losses, that's the bottom. And now we're going to move to the top. And like, I don't know if he's just high and that's why he's talking like that. But it seems like he's just like, he still thinks he's up here, even though he's all the way at the basement. And, that doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to like, oh yeah, I'm walking away.
Aaron Rodgers' contract runs through 2026, and his cap number for the next couple of seasons is 31.6 million, 40.7 million, 59.3 million, and then 53.4 million. And they will not be saving money against the cap if they cut him until 2025.
Yeah, I don't know how all that works with because I think the contract becomes void if he retires, but not the part that they already paid him. And so then it's going to become like a whole nasty legal thing where they're trying to sue him for money that they paid, even though he didn't live up to his contract and all that. I don't know exactly how it all works, but I think that he would definitely be screwing the Packers. Like I said, I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think the only reasonable way out would be like a Matthew Stafford situation where they just say, hey, we're going to rebuild, we're trading Rodgers. And I don't know if that's an option on the table right now. I think if that does happen, that they're just going to have to fire the entire front office staff to like say like, okay, we want somebody in who's going to be in charge of this rebuild that isn't you. You guys had your shot, it's over with. So just a couple quick hitters here before we go to the next break. You could just give me an answer. No explanation or anything. Josh Downs or Kelvin Ridley?
Downs.
Bigsby or Demont?
Oh man, that one's actually that one's tougher than I thought it was going to be, because Montgomery's kind of on the outs. Man, I think I would go with Bigsby just because everyone loves him so much. No, screw that. I can't ever say I'm going to draft Bigsby, so I'm going to take Montgomery.
All right, last one. Michael Mayer or TJ Hawkinson?
I take Hawkinson. I think that this past week, I mean, it's only a 1 week sample, but that's all we can work with. But they showed that he's going to be a pivotal piece of that offense. So I know I wasn't really supposed to talk about it, but I do believe that he will be pretty damn good in Minnesota.
Yeah, he looked good.
That's all you got? All right, yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
No, that was a lot of fun. I definitely think it's good. It's a good exercise because not only do you start thinking about where am I going to place these rookies or incoming rookies, but you also start thinking about players like Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that. Well, maybe it's time to move them down the ranks because I don't feel as high about them. Or like a Terry McLaurin or whoever. So I love those kind of exercises. It really makes you think, and then that's when you start going back and saying, "No, it's time to make a trade," because I don't love this guy as much as I used to, or I love him more than I ever thought. And speaking of loving more than ever, you need to love yourself as a man. And that came out weird, but I think that. We're doing the whole Movember thing here as a group for the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Network. You can see it in Tommy T's mustache. We obviously all have the mustaches, but they're going into the beard, so it doesn't work out quite as well. It's not as much of a statement. Unfortunately, wifey won't let me shave this masterpiece, so I cannot get away with that. But more importantly, we have a link that we'll be putting in the show sheet or on YouTube, or not in the show sheet, in the show link, that you can click on, and you can donate money to help with men's health, and just go get yourself checked out. Make sure that you are taking care of you. And we will be back here in just a little bit, and we'll talk about some games and players that we're going to be checking out.
Yeah, the difficulty with Taylor is, 90% of his ability comes from being this significant workhorse back. If all of a sudden he comes back and he's not getting 22 carries a game, he's getting 14, 15, it just cuts his value down significantly.
Right, and it would be insane to give him more than that. As a person who rosters Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty, I hope they give him 30 carries a game and ride him. But as a person who roots for the Colts and roots for Jonathan Taylor, that would be organizational malpractice.
Yeah,
there's no fun. You're gonna give him 25 carries, but you're 3-7. It's insane.
And the Jonathan Taylor season is just like one of the saddest stories. It's almost as sad as Brees, but it's just injuries and derailments of terrible offenses. But it's also a good lesson that when people were investing, I don't remember if I talked about this on the pod or not, but one of my friends DM'd me one day and he said, "Hey, somebody's offering me J.K. Dobbins and 323 firsts for Jonathan Taylor. Should I take that?" And I was like, yes, you should take that. You should break your phone and you should take that. And those were the kind of trades that you were able to get for JT this offseason. And so when someone gets to that crazy kind of level, and this isn't just when someone gets to a good level, you got to trade them. But when someone gets to that level, you have to trade them because they're worth so much more. And no, J.K. Dobbins, isn't saving that guy's team right now or anything, but I can guarantee you he's going to be feeling pretty damn good with those 23 firsts, or he could have turned those 23 firsts into someone else, and now JT's barely worth a 23 first at this point.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that, but
I don't know. He's getting pretty close to. He's getting pretty close to being dead in Dynasty because it does not take very long with running backs. I know he's not old, but we just talked about a nice crop of running backs coming in, and there's gonna come a point where you go Jahmyr Gibbs or JT, and you're gonna start thinking about it. You're gonna be like,
well, that was tricky.
I don't know.
Earlier in the offseason, it was 3 trades, but essentially it got down to David Carr and Jonathan Taylor for Danny Dimes, Brees Hall, and 223 firsts. I was kind of iffy about it at that point, but I'd already won it, and I just wanted to switch things up, and I really liked Brees Hall. Just feeling really good about it for a second there. I don't know how I feel about it now with Brees Hall going down, and then also, Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones. But
but Derek Carr is Derek Carr.
Thank you. You make me feel much better now. I appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, I think you can kind of say the QBs are a wash. So just take them out, and then you're talking about Brees Hall and what'd you say, 223 firsts for JT? Yes. That's the easiest smash in the history of the world. The injury sucks, and maybe he's not going to be fully healthy at the beginning of the season, but you're going to go get one of these or two of these guys that we were just talking about. You're going to go get you a Jordan Addison. You're going to get you a CJ Stroud or, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sean Tucker, whoever. And you're going to be like, wait, I got Brees Hall, Sean Tucker, and Quentin Johnston. Wait, I'm feeling pretty damn good right now.
Heck yeah.
But we are here to talk now about some of the college football games that we're going to be watching this week and what we think the best picks are here. As always, I do my due diligence. I go pretty wild with the research for this kind of stuff, and so I'm definitely not, even though I'm looking this way, I'm not looking for my pick right now. But Andy, why don't you go ahead and start us off real quick?
All right, so last week I'll just say I should have won by betting the over on Georgia's total, but Tennessee was just so inept that they couldn't even force them to play offense in the second half. So the process was right there. But I I really didn't research this week too much either, John. So I'm in the same boat as you, but I did catch a glimpse of TCU at Texas. And TCU obviously undefeated. I believe they are 4th in the college football playoff poll right now, which might be a curse after what we saw last week. But they are 7-point underdogs to a Texas team who's had some pretty questionable games this season. I know we love Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy and obviously Bijan Robinson. But I love Kendre Miller, and I think Max Duggan's been playing okay. And then Quentin Johnston, who we've said like 30 times today already, he's on that team too. But he might not be playing. That's obviously not what you want to see from that team. But I think TCU's been playing well enough. Their defense has been pretty solid for a Big 12 team anyway. So they're getting 7 points. I'm going to take those points, please.
Actually, we talked about that, right before we jumped on. You had kind of mentioned it, and I'll tell you what, I agreed with you. Like that seems pretty wild with how they've looked, and I don't. And honestly, like Texas has looked okay. Quinn Ewers has looked okay. I'm not hating on the guy or anything like that, but man, I don't think it's a -7 kind of feel, even if it is at home and everything. I think that, I think I really like that one. And then mine, once again, I didn't really go crazy with the research here or anything like that. But we just saw LSU beat Alabama. We saw like their defense is playing pretty well. They're obviously Jaden Daniels, but we also saw how bad Arkansas was against Liberty. Why is LSU only favored by -3 here? Like that just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I get it that it's not at home and everything, but I don't really think that really matters at this point. I think LSU is a much better team, and I know it's narrative street, but like they have a shot at making the college football playoffs right now. And they're going to walk all over Arkansas to get to that college football playoffs. So unless they're just one of those kind of teams, it's like, oh, we just won the Super Bowl by beating Alabama, and now they're gonna just completely forget about everything else. But I really don't think that's what it is. I think I would be easily betting the LSU -3 side there.
I mean, we might both be walking into traps right here just because it seems like too good to be true. But I mean, I'm with you there too. Like LSU's obviously coming off like the best game since Brian Kelly's been there for sure. So maybe there's a bit of like a hangover there and they're coming off that high. But I mean, with how bad Arkansas has been playing, we don't know what KJ Jefferson's health is going to be like. It'll all depend on the what the tempo of the game is. If Arkansas can establish that run early, then it's going to be a bit of a dogfight. But Jaden Daniels has shown that you can't stop that offense when if you're covering Boutte and all those other guys, he's just going to tuck it and run it. So it's tough to slow them down.
I agree. And then as far as the players that we want to watch, I had said last week how I'd moved Drake May above Caleb Williams in the 2024 class. And, I got some, I don't want to say grief, but I definitely got some feedback and things about it. Some people agreed with me. And then I've since then, I've actually heard a lot of people loving on Drake May, which is pretty cool. Just like, I don't want to say I started it, but I mean, clearly I started it. But then since then, I've, even my co-host on the Devy Devotional, Aaron Wilcox, he's the biggest Caleb Williams fan. And so he's been talking about how electric he is, how amazing he is. I've actually never watched him play college football. So I know I love me some Caleb Williams, but I don't have him right now in the same tier as Drake May. I have him like a half a tier below, if you will. And so I want to actually watch Caleb Williams this weekend and just, see if the hype is real and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to change my true opinion on him, but I just want to see, what all the hoopla is about. So I want to watch Caleb Williams. And I mean, it's going to be probably like an easy game up against Colorado where he's not going to have to do too much, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I can, see the fun part that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure USC is like a 40-point favorite in that game. So
Probably.
if you want to see Caleb Williams throw some touchdowns, that's a good one to tune into.
Right.
But I am going with Kendre Miller, who TCU, talking about them. I talked about him on the Devy recap this weekend. I just think that this guy is crawling up people's boards right now. I mentioned it on the show. He's got a touchdown in every game this year. He's ran for 100 yards in 6 of his last 7 games. He's now over 1,000 yards on the season. He does well enough catching the ball. I was trying to comp him to a player. And if you want a player from the Big 12, who we've actually talked about him earlier today, I think Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon maybe has a better profile catching the ball in college, but Kendre Miller's in this Sonny Dykes offense where, it's kind of run and gun. They're not really asking much from the running back in the passing game. And he's well enough as a pass blocker where I think he's going to get that work in the NFL, where he's going to be in there on third downs to get some of those check downs on like the 3rd and 18 plays where, they're not even thinking about getting a first down. They're just like, let's get some field position before we punt here. So if he's in on those plays, he's obviously going to get value there. So I like Kendre Miller. I want to see him again. Obviously this week it's against Texas. It's going to be a big stage. So yeah, I'm watching him. I want to see another 100-yard performance would be cool, and obviously keep that touchdown streak rolling.
He's just getting stronger and stronger. I talked about how I have him in my top 5. I'm pretty sure I drafted him in our rookie mock that we did like a month ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have said about Kendre, like, oh, if he comes out, the way he's playing, like it seems like there's no way he's not coming out in this year's draft. I guess we can't guarantee anything, but man, I love me some Kendre, and he's fun to watch. I have watched him, and he is definitely fun to watch, and he's fun to look at in the stat sheet as well. But
real quick, Kendre Miller, since we were just talking about that Dynasty mock draft, he went RB28, which would be Bijan Robinson in the NFL.
Oh, that's the easiest thing. I mean, I was never in on Robinson. It never really made sense when the team was hyping him up, and obviously like the whole him getting shot, it was very sad. I'm happy that he's back on the field and all that, but I never really believed in the talent. And I don't know what the coaches thought they were getting or doing by forcing Antonio Gibson out. They bring Robinson back in, and all of a sudden it's just like nothing. He's basically nothing. So yeah, that's the easiest decision I've ever had to make, actually.
All right, Lucas has got a trickier one for you: Kendre Miller or Damian Pierce?
I obviously we know that Pierce is playing very well, but he's a 4th round draft pick on a terrible team that is probably going to get replaced at some point. Like, unfortunately, that's just what happens. We've seen it happen way too many times with Michael Carter, with James Robinson. There's obviously other examples as well. And I believe that Kendre Miller is going to be an earlier draft pick than Damian Pierce was. And so just give me that draft capital. I believe in the talent more than Damian Pierce, even though I will, to his credit, like he looks like Marshawn Lynch light when he's running. Like, he's very difficult to tackle and all that. I don't really know if he's actually like all that talented, but not going down, not going down on the first hit, it is, a talent as well. So I like Damian Pierce. I love Kendre Miller.
Yeah, they might replace Damian Pierce with Kendre Miller.
They very well could. And I mean, you would comp him to Mixon, and I love the comp, like stylistically and everything. But isn't Mixon a little bit bigger though?
I think he's taller. They're both around 220.
Okay.
Mixon's like 6'1", and Kendre's like.
I was thinking Mixon was a little heavier, but maybe I'm wrong there.
I think they're both right around 220.
No, you're probably right then. Yeah, I like the comp. I do. I definitely do. And I know a lot of people are probably yelling at their phones or radios or whatever, saying no, you got to take Pierce. Look what he's doing. But I've seen it happen way too many times now, guys. It would not. Bijan Robinson, to the Houston Texans, like, it would not be that insane. And then Damian Pierce is dead at that point.
I
Yeah,
don't
it's
need
one of
another
those.
Travis Etienne, James Robinson situation here. That already hurt my soul enough. I want one more year of Damian Pierce, and then they can, draft somebody else. But give me 2 years of this, guys. That's all I want.
Yeah, for Pierce, like it's one of those things where, like, because Kendra Miller's probably going to be like an early second round pick, I would think, in dynasty drafts. So like if somebody's offering you an early second for Damian Pierce right now, you're probably not going to take that trade. So it's Damian's Pierce is just sort of like a hold, I think, for me right now. But yeah, I hear what you're saying though, John, because as soon as the draft rolls around and he does get usurped by somebody's draft, running back drafted with higher DC, then it changes things immediately. But it's just one of those
Exactly.
things like you don't want to give up on him right now.
It's Michael Carter. I mean, Michael Carter was a fourth round pick who looked great. I mean, he looked absolutely fantastic last year, and he took over that backfield. People were concerned about the size. It didn't matter. He looked awesome, and he was maybe not a first round pick valuation, but he was definitely like an earlier second round pick valuation by the end of the year. And then they go and draft Brees Hall, and he was completely dead until Hall got hurt. So, I mean, obviously, like, you can still hold on to hope that Pierce will be valuable as a backup for injury purposes, that kind of thing. But, like, the chances or the odds of him getting replaced are pretty damn good.
Yeah, for sure.
But we're past the hour mark here, so why don't we go ahead and get out of here? It was a lot of fun, and I don't know, talking about that draft and then talking about our draft from like a month ago kind of makes me want to redo our rookie mock here pretty soon, if
I
not
think
the
we might
next
have
one.
to.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It feels like, should we wait until after week 12 when it's actually done, or should we just go ahead and do it next year or next week, and then we can do another one in like 3 or 4 weeks?
I don't know. Yeah, or maybe we'll just do like keep the draft theme going and do like a Devy mock draft without like the 23 guys. We'll think about it. We'll do
Yeah.
some.
I don't know. Yeah, I kind of want to do a draft. So why don't we think about that, figure out what we're going to do for next week. But we appreciate you guys listening. Lucas, is there anything else that we needed to touch on before we got out of here?
No, y'all did awesome again, just like usual. Make sure you check out every other thing that we put out under the Full Tilt Podcast brand. We have our Tuesday Dynasty podcast. We have Wednesday Devy podcast. Friday we have our Walkabout, where we kind of touch on everything. It's more of a strategy based show. And then we have our Big Billy's review comes out Monday nights, and Andy Starr's Devy review comes out Tuesday mornings. So make sure you tune in for all of our great content. Please subscribe. Please give us reviews. Please share our content. Absolutely cannot grow unless you all are the ones who are saying, yeah, you guys are awesome. We love to hear it. And if we can improve, let us know. We do this for you all to put out as good a product as we possibly can. So y'all did amazing again tonight. And thanks for spending your Wednesday night with us.
Great points. I appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. But for now, we're cashing out.